Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television.
I'm Kerry, Fink, and welcome to Helping Seniors of Brevard Television. This is a program that's designed to educate, inform, and connect you to resources that are going to help you as you develop your own aging plan. On behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, I want to welcome you to Helping Seniors TV today. We've got a great topic that is really going to be beneficial for you, and we're going to cover the topic of public benefits. This is a question that people often call the Senior Information Helpline at 321-473-7770. They're trying to manage the things that come up along the way as we add years to our lifespan. Things come up. That's why Joe Steckler, our president and founder, has talked about the importance of making an aging plan. What is that? It's the same reason why here in Florida we make a hurricane plan. Doesn't mean we want to have a problem. It means we want to be prepared if a problem is coming at us. And so one of the reasons that I keep thinking this is so important to share is that time and time again, I've had this conversation with so many people that are experts in the area of elder law and things like that. And they say so often it's heartbreaking. They wish they had seen somebody, met a family maybe 30 days before a particular incident happened, because there was so many more options that were available when you plan in front of a crisis rather than when you're trying to solve a crisis. And so with that, this program should really help us a lot to understand some of the things that might be available to us and how not to make some mistakes along the way of getting there. This is the top 3 questions about public benefits. And what a great blessing to have none other than attorney Katie Jackson Stolz with the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen here with us today. Welcome. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being here, and we were having a good conversation about this because so many people, number one, we don't know oftentimes, even when we use the word public benefits, what that means. I can tell you how often I've heard people get confused. Oh, I have Medicaid, when what they mean is they have Medicare. You must get questions like this all the time as people walk in the door and start asking you questions about their situation.
Absolutely. So we do get asked, we usually narrow it in scope to the Medicaid benefit and the VA aid and attendance benefit.
So those are really 2 different programs that, and when we say public benefits, that means like once you're in the program, you're getting assistance basically from the federal government. Is that correct?
Correct.
So when we talk about Medicaid, and I think there's a great deal of confusion there because people say, well, I turned 65, so now I've got Medicaid, and we don't know better. But what we probably actually mean is we probably got Medicare and not necessarily Medicaid, because you don't get Medicaid unless you specifically apply for it. Am I saying that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's back up a notch and talk about these 2 public benefits. I assume the VA benefit, obviously, you yourself would have to have some service with the armed forces, or I know there's cases where you're related and maybe then you're entitled to benefits. When somebody comes in and starts talking about these, what is my ability to tap into VA benefits, or what's my ability to tap into Medicaid, you must have sort of a process that you sit down and walk through with somebody to help them kind of see where they sit in terms of eligibility, just generally speaking first. Is that where it starts?
Absolutely. So for VA, our office primarily does the aid and attendance benefit. Mm-hmm. It's largely for the veteran or the surviving spouse. I've been doing a lot of survivors applications lately because the women are living longer than the men. But that benefit, the one thing you cannot change is the dates of service. Mm-hmm. So to narrow it down right from the beginning, I would usually ask for the DD-214 or the discharge paperwork, look at their dates of active duty and make sure they meet the criteria. Without those dates, we can't apply for the aid and attendance benefit.
And when you talk about Medicaid, is it usually that you're involved in planning for Medicaid, or how does that come about, those conversations come about in your office?
Absolutely. So there's crisis Medicaid and then proactive planning for the possibility of Medicaid down the road. Crisis planning, we've been getting a lot of that lately, and it's often people that fell and they're in a rehab facility, or maybe mom or dad or husband or wife broke a hip, and now their rehab days are ending, and they're going to have to start private paying the facility the rate of a couple $100s a day, and they're worried, how am I going to be able to pay for this? So we do an in-depth analysis of the income sources, the assets that they have available, and kind of just discuss those things with them, and then look to what strategies are available to their family to qualify for Medicaid.
So when you talk about Medicaid, it's not just an automatic. There are like qualification processes that you have to go through to get deemed approved to be on Medicaid. That's basically how I'm understanding it?
Absolutely. So there's income limits, there's asset limits. Medicaid looks at everything that you have, anything you'd file in a tax return. So the asset cap is currently at $2,000 for an individual. For a married couple, there's a community spouse resource allowance of around $137,000. And then there are income limits. So it's around 23, I think 2,523. So if you're over that income, and you're the spouse that needs to go into a facility, be on care, need Medicaid, you would need a qualified income trust.
So when you say, because when you first mentioned that figure, $2,000, when you said Medicaid asset limit, I was almost thinking, were you talking about income? But you were actually talking about a $2,000 asset. Well, if you have a car, fairly late model car, you might be over that right there, right?
You would be, however, a vehicle is excluded, and so is your homestead, and the current cap is $636,000 of equity in your home. So there are countable and non-countable assets for Medicaid purposes. They're all disclosed when applying for Medicaid, but in the policy manual, you're allowed to have a home and a vehicle. So those things are excluded. So
what you're talking about when you say, like, if you had $4,000 just sitting in a savings account someplace, you would be over that limit. Am I saying that right?
You are. You are saying that right.
So that's why, because we talked about this, you said one of the top 3 questions you get asked about is Medicaid spend down, right? What does that mean, actually?
So there's been a lot of, we'll hear from potential clients or clients, oh, I thought, mom or my wife, we had to spend all of our money before we could possibly apply for Medicaid. And that's not true. The state of Florida provides us with plenty of tools to qualify for the Medicaid benefit. And we disclose all of those tools in an application. But it's a very advantageous state to help people maintain assets, husbands and wives maintain assets and still qualify for Medicaid, get the care they need, be properly placed in a facility that they need to be in.
That really brings up a point when you're talking about the spend down, because I guess that's something we've all universally heard. When you talk about like, oh, I can only have $2,000, that would seem like, well, I got to get rid of everything so I can qualify for Medicaid. But then I've also heard, because we've done a number, for example, and I want to just stop and mention, by the way, if you're finding this topic useful, you'll find a lot. All you have to do is go to helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. All of our TV programs, radio shows, articles, things like that are archived there, and you can just type in and find a topic that's of interest. You can also find it on our YouTube channel or Facebook. But what made me think about that was I had done a television program with Amy B. Van Fossen of the law office there, and I remember her very distinctly saying that people will make mistakes all the time. I said, well, I just wanted to gift the house to my kids because they were going to get it anyway, or I was going to just sell it and give them the money. And many of those could either mess up the Medicaid plan or cause a delay to it. Am I saying that right?
Absolutely. So the theory is if you're going to get on Medicaid or the VA aid and attendance benefit, if you can give your money away, then you don't need the benefit. So Medicaid in the state of Florida has a 60-month or 5-year look back for gifting. There is a penalty period a penalty divisor of around $9,000 or so dollars. So every year the state will say, what does it cost for about 1 month to private pay at a nursing home? That's our penalty divisor. So this year it's $9,000, almost $10,000. So say you gave away $50,000 in the last 5 years, divide that by our $10,000 divisor, they're going to penalize you 5 months before they would allow you to get on Medicaid.
So that means you're paying that somehow out of your own pocket, even though you'd already given the money away and you no longer have it.
Right, and so there's ways to cure the gift, which you would disclose to Medicaid, but there are ways to still qualify, but you would have to cure or reverse the gift. And
wow. See, Katie, that's one of the things that I think is so fascinating. We have this conversation in the Helping Seniors world where we say you have to really get ahead of the curve. We call it jokingly getting your ducks in a row, try to make sure you have a plan. But the corollary that seems to come out of it is we're often saying, but the thing that we keep learning as we talk with more and more experts is this is not something you want to try on your own because there's so many nuances. When you start talking about things like look back period, and I think that also applies to some extent in VA planning, like if you think you're going to apply for VA aid and attendance, there's still qualification things that you have, hoops that you have to jump through. But then there's also a look back period that gets in there too.
Absolutely. So VA is a 36-month look back period, and they also have a penalty for gifting. So both Medicaid and VA aid and attendance, when you do the application, there is a question, have you gifted in the last 36 months or 60 months, whether it's VA or Medicaid respectively?
Yeah, and I don't know how directly important this is in our conversation at this moment, but I do know that here in Florida, we're seeing such an influx of people who are moving to the state. You know, they may be saying like, well, I was up north, but I want to come and enjoy Florida sunshine, or, you know, they're coming from out west or whatever. But they think they have everything in order from maybe they had a great attorney, you know, in the state that they came from. But as they come to Florida, they may be surprised that there are certain rules that are very beneficial to a homeowner here in Florida that they may not be familiar with in their home state. And so it really makes sense, like when you're talking about public benefits, and say, oh, we got to get rid of stuff because, you know, mom may need to go to Medicaid. Let's just sell the house. And that may not be the best strategy necessarily.
Absolutely. You know, when you sell the house, you're going to have gains on the house from the time mom bought it, versus if with proper planning, you know, you're able to maintain the home until mom would pass away, you're going to get that stepped up cost basis. So there will be a tax benefit in waiting until someone passes rather than making these transfers prior to their passing.
So as we talk about these top 3 questions that you guys get about public benefits, I think we've kind of covered one, which is like, you know, what's the spend down period and how does it apply to me? What are some of the other questions you hear a lot?
We hear, can I add my name to my mom's deed? Can I have my dad's car? A lot of gifting questions pop up, and Amy's firm answer is no. She will never add a kid's name to a deed. She's very firm about that. And no attorneys in her office are to do that either, understandably so, because we are always thinking of Medicaid down the road. Amy also always says there's no crystal ball. A lot of people don't think that they would ever need Medicaid or qualify because of their assets, but really people can have hundreds of thousands of dollars, and with the tools Florida allows, qualify for Medicaid. So gifting things to your children is not the way to go when you're in these older years and you know, Medicaid is on the table.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was referring earlier to a TV program that I had the privilege of doing together with her, where it was specifically that, do I put my kid on the bank account because I need some help? Which brings us really to another one of those top questions that we talked about, which is you get asked all the time about power of attorney stuff, right?
Absolutely. So at the moment, I'm irritated with power of attorneys because so many clients, like you're saying, are moving from out of state, or they're even local, or in Florida, and they think they have a good power of attorney, but they really don't. So something to remember is that Florida's a really robust elder law state and estate planning state. We have so many older individuals here, and we're really lucky to have really great lawyers and individuals like yourself. So we have great laws above and beyond other states' laws. So our power of attorney, for example, has a lot more criteria in order to be valid compared to another state. Florida doesn't really care about the other states, so I also have people that have gotten power of attorneys and they think, oh, I got mom this 3 years ago, it's great, but it was done by maybe a real estate lawyer. So it's got everything in there that you need for a real estate transaction, but it doesn't have all the stuff I need for my Medicaid planning or my VA planning. So Amy will say time and time again, the power of attorney is the most important document to have in Florida. It will save you so much money down the road if you do need Medicaid planning or just certain things come up in life. So a really good power of attorney done by someone who also does Medicaid or VA, definitely elder law, is something that everybody should have.
I was going to make the comment about power of attorney is one of the things that I've come to understand is that one of the challenges is that it's a document that if it wasn't put together correctly is going to fail you precisely at the moment that you absolutely need it.
Yes.
I mean, because at the very time that, mom just went to the hospital, now somebody's got to step in. It's okay, I got the power of attorney. We got it from an office supply store. We filled it out.
Yes.
And now you go to use it and it doesn't work and there's no do-over at that point.
Absolutely, and that's what I was saying with irritation, because people believe they have a good one, so it's so disheartening when they come, and if our office did it, I'm always like, great. We did it 5 years ago, whatnot. I'm always like, good, we're good to go on any planning or anything that's gonna really help this person. But if somebody else did it, I'm okay, let me see it first. I can't even start the planning until I review it and look line by line to see what powers are in there. So, about 10 years ago, Florida did a substantial update to our power of attorney rules, including you need to initial certain sections. So I'll see power of attorneys from the state of Florida that attorneys did that are only 5 pages and don't even have initials, and they're from 2 years ago. Wow. So I always get so frustrated and feel so bad for the client. If they still have capacity, it's fine. Yeah. I'll do a new one for you, ours, it'll be great. Everything's gonna be great going forward, and you'll be good for life. But if the person has lost capacity, now you're at the intersection of guardianship, which, as many people may know, is costly. It's the court-monitored process, and so a good power of attorney helps you avoid that.
Yeah, that's something that's really been made very clear to me is that that's literally the conversation we've had so many times is like, I wish I'd met your family 30 days before mom had a stroke or whatever happened, because now we don't have really many options other than looking at a guardianship. Whereas if we'd had all this together, a few $100s worth of paperwork or whatever early on with some planning, all of this would have a much easier path. So at the very time that you're most stressed out trying to figure out how to manage the medical, now you got to try to manage this part of it too if you didn't do your planning.
Absolutely. So our power of attorney is probably 14, 15 pages long. So over the years, anytime a client, because essentially every bank, every financial institution has their own legal team, their own lawyers sitting there. Right. So anytime you want to use mom or dad's power of attorney, or husband or wife, or whoever, friend, and you want to make a transaction for the first time, they're going to take that document and their legal team is going to review it. Wow. And so some legal teams are easier to work with. There's other ones, I won't say their names, that you always know there's going to be a problem. So anytime since Amy has been practicing that someone has said, I had this hurdle with this institution, we've gone back and added a line in our document. So I'll give you an example. At one point we had a son taking care of his father, and he banked at a certain bank, I won't say the bank, and he did all the transactions for dad. Dad moved into an assisted living, he helped with all the bill pay, he was the POA set up there. Dad was gonna move to a different assisted living, and the son went to that bank and said, okay, can I please update dad's address on his statements, because he wants to get mail at his new residence. For whatever reason, they looked in the power of attorney and said, oh, it doesn't say you can change dad's address.
Wow.
So we are not going to allow you to do that. Which obviously the son was baffled, considering he could have stole all dad's money and ran to Hawaii, but he couldn't change the the address. So that's just a small example, a more laughable example compared to the bigger roadblocks that we've seen.
So this is really one of the reasons that, again, when we talk about getting your ducks in a row, all this stuff is really so important, because I think people fall into different categories of how they arrive at this place. Number one, with just as the way people are aging, there's more and more seniors every single day. In Florida, we always talk about in Brevard County, 1 in 4 is over 65, and 1 out of 2, at least by AARP definitions, 50 plus, is called a senior. So it's the vast majority of our population. But secondly, with the number of people who are moving to Florida every single month, they may think they're prepared, or they may know that they're not prepared, but they need to get prepared so that we don't find ourselves harming ourselves at the place that we really need that public assistance. And again, from your role, as that's kind of like your wheelhouse of how you serve at the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen, what would you, if you were going to look at a camera and speak to somebody directly, say, listen, this is what I would suggest. Let's sit down and get this paperwork together so that we can have some peace of mind as we move towards Medicaid planning?
I would certainly say, if you're somebody that thinks that Medicaid might be on the horizon for your loved one, come into the office, do a consultation with Amy or with myself. We can look at the family's income, asset sources, if they have an estate plan. And really, once we look at that big picture, we'll be able to tell people what your options are. So I meet with proactive people all the time where one spouse or their parent is starting to lose capacity a bit. Certain things happen and they say, oh goodness, I want to make sure things are organized. So they'll come in, we'll look at everything. I'll provide them with, here's what would happen if we did have to push go, if we did need to plan, if we did need to go for those Medicaid benefits. We're not now, but we've looked at everything, we've analyzed everything. And so people will often leave those meetings, I feel a lot better. I'll sleep better at night. I just know my options. Not that I want to go forward. But if I do, now I know what I can do.
Well, and that's the thing. I use this line a lot. Nancy Deerdorf, our operations director, she always uses this term. She says, how do you know what you don't know? And that's really the problem is that I keep getting the sense that the things that you might do that you think are common sense, like when we were talking earlier in the show about the spend down, like, oh, I just need to get rid of my money so then I'm okay for Medicaid. You think you might be and you may be doing it with even what you think is a good motive. My kids are going to get the house anyway. What's it going to harm? But now you've really kind of messed up your whole line of approach for it.
Absolutely, and I think something that's important to bring up is that when it is a husband and a wife, there's always a sicker spouse and a healthier spouse. Probably everybody wishes it could go at the same time, them and their spouse, but it just doesn't. So our planning, we're often making sure that healthier spouse is taken care of, making sure that we don't completely spend the husband and wife's assets caring for one spouse, leaving that remaining spouse, the healthier spouse, with little or nothing when it comes her time to need that care. So that goes a lot into our planning, is looking at both of them, not just the one that we're going to be applying for Medicaid for, but how do we maintain the other spouse for the remainder of their life as well?
That is such an important part too, because I guess, as just individual people, since it's not what we normally walk around thinking about, all these dimensions and things that you need to take into consideration, most of us, I don't think, would even think down those lines. Like, you're just dealing with the immediate problem and you're not really thinking about the overall strategy. But that's what you are really in a position with that experience to help us get it right, I think.
Absolutely. And so, like we discussed earlier, we do crisis Medicaid a lot, where people are, something bad happened and now they are running out of money, or they're not going to have money to pay for things. And so everything's a rush, everything is really heightened. But we do a lot of proactive planning as well. And that really does set families up for preserving as much of their assets and net worth as possible. A big fear that I hear clients say time and time again is, I'm afraid I'm going to run out of money and caring for my husband or wife, and my kids are going to have to step up and pay something. So a lot of people have that fear of their children having to support them. And the earlier we get in on the planning strategies, the more assets we can preserve, the more tools we have So certainly you do not need to spend down with the amount of tools that Florida allows you to have now. But the earlier you get into the proactive planning, the earlier you'll be able to see your options.
Yeah, I keep going, like I keep learning this every time I sit down with people who are so knowledgeable in this, like yourself, is like, it just really seems like time is your best friend. You want to do these things while time is your friend, not when you're racing to kind of catch up. So Katie, how, if somebody has been paying attention to this and they say, hey, listen, I'm okay, I really ought to sit down and get some more information, how do people get in touch, or what do you suggest, like the next step?
I would say call the office. So
Okay.
you can call the office at 321-345-5945 and just tell whoever answers the phone some details about your case, and they will definitely get you in touch with the right person for a consultation.
I think that's a wise idea, and also you guys are so available out in the community. I know you always do a lot of different trainings and things like that, where you guys are very generous with your time to provide those educational opportunities, just so people are starting to think about the concepts that they need to know. You have some pretty good information right there on your website as well, I think.
Absolutely. So our website has a ton of information by topic area, Medicaid or VA. We actually have quick tips sheets for VA, Medicaid, probate on there. And we also host seminars at our office. So you can call the office to see when the next dates are, or they are on the website. So seminars for VA specifically, Medicaid specifically, and estate planning specifically. As well, if you go to a seminar, you receive a free consultation with Amy. So that's another way that you could get the ball rolling, see if it's a good fit for you, is to go to a seminar, which can be found on the website, or you can just call and ask when the next dates are.
Okay. Well, thank you, Amy Jackson Stolz, for joining us today and helping us understand questions that we need to be aware of for public benefits. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Helping Seniors TV.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.